Hey guys, Matt here, and today I am back for day number 17 of r/NuclearRevenge. I don't remember if exactly 17. It might be even 24. I know. It's just not a good start to today for me. But enough about me. I got 3 stories to get through today, and I honestly just tried to pick ones that looked interesting to me. Let's start off in the middle. Ultimate Revenge. A waitress's story. Insert all the disclaimers. Not safe for work, apparently. This isn't my revenge story, but one that I was somewhat witness to. One night at work, we were getting near closing, so I was busy cleaning my section and doing my side duties. Suddenly, the manager asked me to stay late and open a tab for a guy at the bar and serve him for however long he was going to be there. Naturally, I thought this was strange, as it was after closing time. I wasn't entirely sure if it was legal. My state had odd drinking laws, or has odd drinking laws, but I accepted because I needed the money. I went to the bar and introduced myself to our mysterious guest of honor, and found that he was also accompanied by a police officer, and while friendly, didn't seem in a good mood. I didn't recognize either of them. I took their order and went about my work as usual. After delivering some food and a round of drinks, I eventually ran out of things to do other than wait for another request, so I sat down and happened to notice that the guy was sobbing. I asked my manager what exactly was going on. As it turns out, the man was a local small-time drug dealer. A larger rival group of 5 guys had shown up to his home, presumably to rob and or harm him in some way. He wasn't home, but his pregnant fiancée, however, was. They gang raped her and stabbed her to death. So when he found out who they were, he found all of them and set them on fire. All died. He was processed and found guilty. I don't think he contested it, but because we live in a small jurisdiction, the judge, or whoever responsible for the decision, allowed a police officer to escort him to our restaurant to eat and drink whatever he wanted before he had to go to prison. I didn't catch for how long he was going away for, but we were in a death penalty state, and I imagine there were people in the prison that wanted him dead. Wow. Okay, took a wild turn into heavy rap territory. I did just say the word earlier, but I was just reading it as like auto read. But wow, that was me just auto reading that, and I'm just like, oh yep. In my brain, I processed the fact that I said it, and I'm like, oh, too late. Let's just move on. Oh no, why? Oh, I feel sorry. I feel sorry for the pregnant fiancée. She was already pregnant, so can't get pregnant again. Otherwise, that'd be really weird at that point. Actually, can someone get pregnant while already being pregnant? I know I'm veering wildly away from what we're talking about, but yeah, just that. My brain just goes on the most random tangents sometimes. Let's move on. Prick of a boss was eliminated during party. Sorry for my poor English, and thank you, user, for his edit, so you might not suffer reading my story. TLDR at the bottom. This was difficult for me to read, so I did some grammatical editing for you. This is a story a colleague told me a few days ago. He is an older fellow who is not shy and quite proud of his labour-intensive work background. My colleague was a seaman in his youth, working on ships from Oceania and Asia to South America, etc. He worked on several ships from different companies in countries, but after he married, he quit the sea and now works as a security guy in some lame office from 9 to 5. This event happened in the 80s, and it was in the 80s, in Oceania, where he was working on a fishing ship with a crew of 35 to 45 seamen. My dirty brain is just going into overdrive. About 15 of the seamen were from the same country as him, and others from neighbouring countries as well, but the bosses were from the parent company. Amongst all the bosses, the vice manager is the biggest prick. He has anger issues, repeatedly bullies workers, and even assaulted them from time to time. If a worker wasn't fast enough, he'd often hit them on the head with an iron tool. All the workers did wear hard hats, but even so, it was common for this vice manager to fight and smack workers who didn't dare to challenge him or even fight back. Again, the workers spoke different languages and were working in the middle of the sea, far from land. OP, my colleague who told me this story, VM, vice manager. After several months at sea, almost everybody on the ship has been harassed by VM, even OP, who is a quiet person who doesn't talk a lot. For some reason over the last week, however, VM kept messing with OP every chance he got. OP never complained when there was work to do, and never failed to do it, which made him liked by the other managers. VM seemed to dislike that a low-level seaman was liked by the other managers, and even the captain. During the harassment, VM kept complaining about OP's work, hitting him on the head, cursing, spitting, and trying to start fights. He even accused OP of stealing some cigarettes and ship supplies. That, however, didn't get anywhere as the captain and other managers sided with OP. This harassment went on until OP got to the point where his blood was boiling and he really wanted to smack VM without telling anybody. The revenge. One day the ship got a big catch, so the whole crew worked hard and called it a day. The ships usually don't work the day after a big catch, as their storage would be full and everybody had worked hard the day before. Usually there'd also be a party on the ship. They'd gather in the common room, singing, eating, drinking, oh, a lot of drinking, until they drop. This is important later. VM got drunk and started harassing others and saying short, screaming, etc. But with everybody being drunk, it was nothing weird. OP, however, seeing how drunk VM was getting, decided to hint obviously to VM that he needs to pee outside that night. So he tells everyone that he is going to the loo and heads out to the deck. VM obviously sees him and tries to follow him secretly to the deck so nobody knows. OP knew that VM would follow him, would followed him, but acted like he didn't know that he was followed. So VM would keep following him to the side of the ship on the back. When he got to the back rail, OP acted like he was being on the deck, when suddenly VM attacked him from behind with an iron tool. OP saw the attack coming and fought back. Now they were both punching and hitting each other on the deck. One thing important to remember here is that OP didn't get drunk at the party like VM did. So, unlike VM, OP still had full use of his abilities, making the fight very one-sided. When OP had beaten VM halfway to the ground, he grabbed VM's shirt and trousers and threw him to the ocean in the middle of the cold night. OP spotted VM's shoes lying on the deck where they'd fallen off during the fight and quickly threw them to the ocean too. He returned to his rooms, panicking, shivering, and trying to sleep as the ship kept sailing that night. The next morning, the crew went back to work as normal, and OP returned to his work as normal. By 10 AM, one of the other managers is looking for VM, but can't find him. So he reported him missing to the captain. No one could remember seeing him after the party, and he wasn't in any of the rooms, so the ship was brought to a stop, and the crew was instructed to search for him in every corner. OP even took part, even though he knew he was never to be found. Everybody was questioning his whereabouts except OP, as he was less likely to know or even have anything to do with him, especially as he was considered a quiet man. The captain also took into account that everybody was drunk that night, especially VM, as he was known to be a heavy drinker. So the captain assumed that VM might have fallen into the ocean that night and on his own without anybody knowing. The crew continued their work that day, and the captain might have reported to shore about the missing VM, but that's it. Without VM on board, working conditions were a lot better. No harassment, no bullying, nobody fighting, and all the seamen were happy VM was no longer there. OP decided to quit after this incident, but years later he started working on a ship again, but in a different country. TLDR, Shorty Bus, who keeps on harassing and assaulting low-level workers on fishing boats, was eliminated by a quiet worker during a party and thrown to the sea. It's like Hitman's level of just toss you into the ocean. I'm trying to remember. Wasn't there some sort of game where you could toss people into the ocean, or some movie where people got tossed into the ocean? I don't really remember. But I hope VM didn't drown, because then that's probably even worse. Last story for today. Park in a disabled spot? Enjoy selling your home. Sorry for making this long, but the context is pretty important. So my little sister, who is the sweetest girl in the world, is 12 years old but can't walk or communicate. Her mental age is around 6 months. She obviously cannot attend a regular school, but since we live in a big city, there is a wonderful school for kids like her. Even though we don't own a car, since we don't need one, we got the city to put up signs in front of our house designating a 4-meter spot for wheelchair pickup and drop off for her school bus every morning and afternoon. The signs went up perhaps 2 years ago, and after the first week, we never really had any issues since most of our neighbours are wonderful and totally understanding of our designated spot. For some context, we live in a perhaps poorer community, though we're well off, but in 9 years here, we've had nothing but great interactions with everyone here. Sadly, the neighbourhood is gentrifying, and we're getting more self-centered people with their Mercedes-Benz or Audis honking while my sister gets loaded onto a school bus, which takes around 4 minutes, but blocks a little street, which really pisses us off, as well as the other sane people that witness it. Naively, we thought this would be the extent of our unpleasant interactions. In September, we woke up like on any other Monday morning to a shiny BMW parked in a disabled spot. It wasn't just partially in it, it was positioned perfectly to take up the entire spot. To make things worse, there were about a dozen open spots on the block, and it's not like they were all vacated that morning since we woke up at 6 AM. We were baffled. I'd seen this many cars many times since last July, and it was definitely the same car, since there aren't many burgundy sport cars in our neighbourhood. It was usually parked about 20 meters south on our street, so we knew it belonged to a neighbour a few doors down. We did all the basics in this type of situation. We took a picture, took down the license plate, and called the police to report it. The cops came by within the hour and wrote a big fat ticket. I believe it was for $700, but don't quote me on it. Anyways, it was a significant amount. At around noon, a smug, angry guy came knocking on my door. I had the day off from school and was home on my own. It was obvious it was the owner of the car, so I made a quick decision to record the conversation, or screaming match, on my phone. I opened the door, and before I could say a thing, the douche lays into me. I'm a 16-year-old guy, and he's in his mid-40s. Mid-life crisis, maybe. He accuses me of all things, ranging from putting up those signs this morning to being racist. He was East Asian, I believe, but we really have a diverse community. He goes on to say that disabled spots should even be a thing, that it's always empty, totally shooting himself in the foot based on his previous comments, that we should pay for his undeserved ticket, that isn't even an inconvenience since the spot next to his was free and my sister could just get on the bus from there, blah blah blah. Once he finished, I said okay and shut the door on his furious face. He rang the doorbell another 5 times before storming off. To my satisfaction, the recording caught everything fairly clearly. In the evening, I told my parents what had happened and gave my dad a copy of the recording. We have a pretty tight-knit community for the most part, and there is a neighborhood Facebook group with around 3,000 members. My dad decided to post a summary of what had happened, along with the recording and a picture of the car in a spot on the page. There was an immediate uproar with people saying they would fight back or whatever. We were humbled by the feeling that our community was standing up for us, but we didn't think anything would come of it. The next day, I leave the house to go to school and walk by the guy's car, back at his normal spot, and noticed that his front right tire was deflated. Upon closer inspection, it was slashed. As I said, our community is tight-knit, but I can't say I expected anything like this to happen. The guy must have seen the Facebook post, because he didn't come back to our house to complain or accuse us of anything. The following weeks were sweet. Whenever I saw him in public, people would go up to him and remind him that he was a shorty human being. A bit harsh in my opinion, but they weren't my words. In November, his house had a for sale sign in the window. The house market had also gone down by a bit. I'm always kind of curious about how much houses similar to ours are selling for compared to how much we paid for ours in 2011. So I knew what he paid for it in July. Once I saw the for sale sign, I rushed home and checked the local house listings, and lo and behold, he was selling it for $90K less than what it was going for in July. He really wanted to get out of the neighborhood. While his crime wasn't nearly worth $90K, I must say I don't feel bad. Worst case scenario, he sells that obnoxious car of his, which would easily cover the lost money. Let's just say that we hadn't had a single car parked in our sister spot since. And TLDR, douche parks in reserved handicap spot in front of our home and gets harassed by an entire neighborhood. For doing so, he ends up having to sell his home and a $90K loss. That's what happens when you park in a disabled spot. You're gonna get what's coming to you. You're gonna get a horrible life. I'm gonna end this episode here. Links will be in the description to my main channel and also the second channel, along with links on the screen to the playlist in the last episode. Go check them out. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you know when the next video comes out. A ding, a ding. I'm the Mad Scientist. Mad Scientist out.